This is Marketing Uncomplicated. Hello, and welcome back to the show, everybody. Today's guest is Corey Morris, an award-winning digital marketing expert, best-selling author, and the co-founder and CEO of Voltage, a premier digital agency. Corey's new book, The Digital Marketing Success Plan, outlines why every company needs a clear, accountable digital marketing plan, especially in today's fast-changing landscape. Over the past 2 decades, Corey has led national and local brands to success with ROI, so return on investment driven strategies, spoken at major events like SMX and Digital Summit, and contributed to top publications like Search Engine Journal, Search Engine Land, and Forbes. He also is the recipient of the KCDMA Marketer of the Year Award and continues to drive industry leadership through speaking, writing, and community initiatives. Corey, welcome to the show. It's so great to have you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, so to start off, Corey, I wanted to talk about your 20-year journey in digital marketing. How has that landscape changed, which we all know it has, from when you started to today? Loaded question, I know.
Yeah. Yeah, the shorter version of it, without giving you my entire, biography and life story
We want
is
to hear the biography and life story. Go ahead.
well, I started out, this is my 20th year, as you noted. And so I started out in a traditional ad agency in their digital side before we called anything digital, when it was still internet marketing and online marketing. I was a project manager and came out of school without any background in web, and was sitting between the client and 3 developers and a UX designer. And so it was interesting because this was before WordPress or anything being open source. And so everything was still hard coded. And I ended up learning some basic HTML at that time and looked around at where the landscape was going and got really excited about SEO. So I raised my hand. Fortunately, the agency I was working in was willing to invest in me and sent me to some of the industry leading training at the time, and really found a passion for it. And a lot of the things I look through and have looked through the lens of over the past, last 18 years have been related to search within digital marketing. And so I watched the emergence of social media out of nowhere. But even in search, there have been so many crazy things of how many times we thought it was going to die or go away and something else would emerge. I've been guilty of writing some stories with SEO being dead or questioning it in the headline as well over the years. But from keyword data getting taken away from us in analytics to other channels emerging to all the animal named algorithm things that Google rolled out in the late 2000s, up through, all the different click searches that started happening before even the pandemic, and then even, the emergence of AI. So the constant in all of that has been change, but the steady force has been the fact that I have clients who have, their website, their content, their target audience, and they want to be found no matter what that medium is, whatever the channels are, and the mix of platforms that come with it. The constant of change has been, a factor that has that no matter what it looks like, has kept us trying to reach that target for each of those clients. And so that's been an interesting, and probably, there are days where I'm like, can we just not change something today, or have, Google or whoever break something or whatnot, where you're just tired, you want to power through, the tasks in front of you, but then huge breakthroughs with strategies and be able to look back and see those great case studies and opportunities where we move the needle for a business as well. So there's a lot of pluses and minuses to it, but it's been an interesting journey, and one I wouldn't have planned out or had the ability to even plan out like a career arc on, as well, of knowing where I started to then working up the ladder in different agencies, and ultimately then acquiring the one that I own today, going from an employee to owner as well.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I want to dive in a little bit into that. But before we do, I love that you go back and you say, yes, the landscape has changed and it's ever evolving, and digital is getting wilder. But on top of it, it's, the ask and the request from the client is going to be similar. Even if we are to one day start marketing on Mars, the request of needing to be found and wanting to be discovered, and really that, connecting to that, product market fit and go to market strategy, is that through line that's never going to be different and change. The tool sets, the way to do it, or how, like, Google just recently, not recently, but had called, the customer journey, now the messy middle, because there's so much and so many ways for, products and services to be discovered by their customer base. But it is that same process that's going to continue for years and years and years, which is the desire of needing to be discovered and getting in front of their potential client.
Yeah, the need to understand how to map out a strategy and align your goals, and to start there and start at the end versus starting at the beginning with a bunch of tactics, is critical, because that's where so many companies and get lost of, either we've just always done it this way. So we write, 3 blog posts a month, and we post
Yep.
7 times a week on social. We just do that without revisiting how that's connected to their strategy or what that's actually driving,
Yeah.
or jumping into, the minutia of best practices for SEO or something, and optimizing and doing a bunch of technical things and hoping that will get you there, with, again, zoomed way too far in, without at least starting with, what is our strategy? What is the ROI? How to take this from not just marketing, digital marketing KPIs, but actually what moves the needle for the business, so you don't get out of alignment over time. And unfortunately, we have more distractions than ever before, of things to just jump into and try and test, but doing it aimlessly, is really dangerous right now, because you can waste a lot of time and a lot of money without any return, and then write something off that could work in the right
Yeah.
context.
Yeah, totally. I like that you finished off by saying that it could work, but the pre-planning, which is something that you talk about a lot, and it's almost like, we were reading minds, because you had my next question in terms of, like, digging into this planning, because you're right. A lot of clients are just, they launch, whether it's launching their new business, or whether it's launching a new product or service, and they just go ham and head to market without taking a step back to actually consider what that planning could potentially look like, and to really get the most bang for their buck, and ensuring that something can actually work for them, versus, you know, going out into market with zero planning and having to backtrack and take a step back. So walk us through a little bit about that structure and that strategy as it relates to planning. And what do you think so many companies still skip, in terms of creating a real digital marketing campaign?
Yeah, I'll answer the last part of that first. So I think it gets skipped because it's assumed that because it's digital, it's online, and optimization is in the name if it's SEO, or
Yeah.
even within, if you're running anything in Google Ads or other ad networks and platforms, is that you have to be constantly monitoring it, and make iterative changes and improvements. So it's not ever going to be perfect when you launch it or start it. So that assumption of the fact that we have to optimize and continue testing and iterating on it, if you take that too far, you're going to put a lot of dollars into Google on the ad side, or you're going to invest a lot of time and money into creating the content or doing the things on your website, without any pre-planning to give you the right context, or the best head start you can have. And so there's a balance needed there to make sure that you know exactly what your numbers are, and you don't get 6 months into something and realize that Google will take your money whether it's working or not.
Yeah.
Or agencies like mine, without that structure or discipline, if you don't have that pre-planning, it's really expensive to just go test something in the wild. And again, depending on what your tolerance is for your testing budget, you'd rather have it, if you can get it to 75% dialed in by taking 30 days or 90 days to go through the research and the planning process and get everyone aligned, I would definitely advocate for doing that, instead of spending 6 months to get it learn 30% and still have some of the same challenges that you never resolved. And then it's hard to really take a step back at that point because everybody's over invested in some ways.
Yeah, and I like that you mentioned the 30 to 60 to 90 day plan because, at 30 days the system is just getting, if we're just talking strictly like digital marketing, your system is really getting to know you as a brand, and then it's kind of picking up and learning like who has clicked, who hasn't clicked, if you've uploaded a list to create lookalikes, and then that 60 days is kind of more robust in terms of really getting to know you, and the 90 days is it working or is it not working? And a lot of, founders just have this quick wanting that quick fix or that quick return on investment where they truly don't really get into understanding that marketing truly isn't a sprint, it's a marathon in all cases. Yes, you can start to get insights and litmus test returns really quickly, but really the robustness is within that trajectory of that long term build out.
Yeah, you want to see quick wins, yes. But unfortunately, the bad news I have to share, or the band-aid I have to rip off when I talk about my framework and approach to it, is this is not like that one magic bullet tactic or that one thing that you want. The framework is more like a choose your own adventure book, but it's set up to have you be successful on the other side of defining your plan and removing a lot of those challenges or those icebergs that you're going to hit if you just dive in and do stuff. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
we've talked about a couple of examples already of, some of the just putting tactics ahead of strategy or testing out in the wild where it can be expensive and or not having and things mapped out deep enough from the KPIs that digital marketing delivers over to business revenue or profitability or results or lifetime value and the things that happen there. All of those things are dangers if you don't address them from the beginning and get buy-in. I talk a lot about what I've nicknamed kind of CEO drive-bys, right? Where even if you've got a solid plan, the someone comes by and says, "What about this audience?" Or "What about trying that? Have we thought about that?" And that's dangerous too if you don't say time out. How does this change the priorities of what we're doing? Do we have new budget for that? How do we want to allocate that? Do we need to step back and do some research? Or are we just going to go shift our focus to something else and then 2 months later shift our focus to another thing? Or if I'm doing broader than just subject matter specifically in one channel, if I'm doing all of digital marketing or I'm doing marketing and three other things and events and things like that, and I wear all those hats, when I get busy with something else, am I going to kind of put those efforts on the shelf and I lose some of the consistency and the compounding value I get of being consistent out there too? So there are a whole number of things that we just scratched the surface on that can
Yeah.
happen if we don't have it planned out. And even with it planned out, those things are happening. And it's how we account for those and move forward without those derailing the whole thing.
Yeah, I completely agree. Thank you for touching on, your process, and I want to dive a little bit deeper into that. I mean, you've created this digital marketing success plan. I want you to walk us through big picture, but also include some details that are pertinent and important, in terms of what exactly it covers and how you kind of move through that playbook, if you will.
Yeah. So the book and and the system itself is Digital Marketing Success Plan, but the process is called START. And
Okay.
so it's an acronym. It's a 5-step process to try to help make it approachable and easy to apply. And so naturally, the S is strategy. I've talked
Yes.
about how strategy has to be ahead of tactics. And so in some cases, that's getting alignment and people on the same page. I've had industries and companies where we got 5 people in the room who have worked at the company for 20 years. They're all using the inside baseball same language,
Yeah.
but they mean different things because they're coming at it from a different perspective, from sales or from product or from the C-suite or from finance. And so making sure that we're clear in terms of our terminology and we do that work backwards, look from revenue down to KPIs, so there's no gap later of whether we know whether it's working or not. We have a clear picture and understanding of that, and we have clearly defined goals at the end of that strategy development process that are very specific in terms of what marketing needs to drive. When we're in a good place there, then we move into T for tactics. That's where we can put everything on the table, every channel, every platform, every opportunity, because we know what we need to drive toward for our goal. So that goal that we define at the end of the strategy phase is the lens that we look through for everything else. So this is where we use any of the research and planning tools native to any of those platforms, any third party leading tools.
Mm-hmm.
And we take some of the guesswork out of it by being able to project what we expect. And then we don't find out, again, months in that, oh, well, there wasn't enough traffic volume in Google for our target audience, or we were too broad or too narrow
Yeah.
to reach those goals. So the goals were unrealistic. We can validate against that and set up our plan for what we want to do. The A is application, and this is, I think about this a lot, or translate this to assets. What do we need in terms of
Mm.
assets to apply our strategy and hit on those tactics? So that's everything from what kind of content do we need in the mix, what kind of visual assets do we need for any display ads, text ads, what even with our website, is our website ready to host a party if we're going to send new traffic and turn
Yeah.
on new channels to it?
Yeah.
And the R is review. And this is making sure that we don't just have a reporting dashboard out of the box setup, or we're not just relying on GA4,
Yeah.
which out of the box has all kinds of problems anyway, but that we've got a 360-degree view of everything. And then we've connected to CRM or ERP, and we can answer the questions of the business impact and outcomes, not just the marketing KPIs that I talked about. And the T, the second T, is transformation. And this is where the whole thing comes together. This is where we get the plan, whether it's on paper, whether it's in slides, whether it's scheduled out in a resource planning or project management system. This is where we block out exactly what we're doing for the next however many months we can. We find the right balance of having planned activities so we stay disciplined and consistent with them, but also built in checkpoints for agility to go back and evaluate and optimize and make sure there's a nice balance of being planned versus agile, and not have any surprises, or where okay, we got busy with that thing 2 months in and then we stopped, or that our web developer went on paternity or maternity leave, parental leave,
Yeah.
and now we didn't plan for that. Now the whole plan is on hold. And so it's getting it out of somebody's head, getting it onto paper or digital format and ready for action. So that's the 5 steps. All of those have a lot to unpack within them, but I like to get through those in 60 to 90 days as well, and get as much alignment as you can through that process. So
Yeah.
no one is surprised down the road, and we can minimize risk and look at this as an investment, not an expense.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, so just to go back, S is for strategy, T is for tactics, A is for assets, R is for report, and then the last T
Is
is
transformation.
transformation.
Yeah, it's
Yes,
strategy, tactics, application, which is heavily
applications.
focused on assets,
Yes,
review, which is heavily focused on how you report it back
yes.
on performance, and then the transformation of bringing the whole plan together.
Love it, love it, love it, love it. How, I mean, this may be an obvious answer, but how does this, along with kind of develop, and I love like processes and I love these type of plans because, just a little bit about, moving from a background of myself, like moving from enterprise into startups, the brilliance of, enterprise companies and having these strategies and having these processes in place, really moving that into smaller businesses and startups really help kind of formulate and keep the company accountable to all the steps that need to be taken, delivery dates and so on and so forth. So, talk to us a little bit about that accountability, especially with the noise and the shifting trends that are constantly happening within digital marketing, because you could be in this 30 to 90 day like build out and then something pops up, which I think is great because you can kind of shift and be open to shifting and not necessarily just, have it set in stone. But, be agile to be able to get to market that some new things may come up along the way. So talk to us a little bit about that accountability.
Yeah, so I call those trigger events in the book, because the last chapter to really get into a little bit about the future, but really how you apply this plan and not just leave you with, okay, you got your nice and neat plan. Now
Yeah.
have fun and figure it out from there. But those trigger events can be anything from the CEO drive by I mentioned earlier, but they could also be, okay, we our product team just developed something, or we just added a new big feature, or we're rebranding, or market factors out there, external things are changing. Like there was a big algorithm change, there was a Google ads change, there was a new, there was disruption in the social platforms and a new one emerged, or two or three, or whatever might have happened with AI disrupting everything again. Any of those things are things that we need to be watching for and monitoring, and have the ability to be agile and to adjust to them. So it's that balance of being planned versus agile, and understanding where a trigger event says, okay, timeout. Even if we need to just only take 5 minutes and talk with myself, if I'm wearing all the hats, or with our team, to understand, okay, we have the agreed upon plan on documented somewhere. It's not just in my head. It's not personal to me. It's
Yeah.
this objective thing here. How does this internal or external change, or this trigger event, change what we're doing today, so we can in real time adjust to it, and not just blindly run the plan and then 3 months down the road wish we had been paying attention to those things,
Yeah.
or vice versa, only reacting to those things, and then the plan was only the plan for about 3 days, and then we've abandoned it and have no revised version, or no central truth to come back to. And then it sounds like a bunch of excuses, whether we're making them or someone reporting to us is making them, when we
Yeah.
get a year in and we're like, well, why didn't we meet the objectives of the plan? Well, this happened, and then this happened, and then you asked me about this audience, and then we did this thing, and we just zigzagged around and didn't really stick with any of them.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, truly, a nice kind of system to keep you moving through the flow. I have a question for you. So once all of this is done, let's dig into that piece of the R, which is the reporting, right? So you build out, you have the strategy, you have the tactics and all of this stuff getting to market. But then this nugget of reporting that is going to keep the marketing in the cyclical format of, testing and learning until you find that product market fit and the floodgates start to open. Talk to us a little bit about that reporting, because that piece is important for folks to understand that marketing is ever expanding, it's ever growing. At least I like to think it is the octopus of your company with the tentacles in the different departments, and it has outreach to everyone, and it is never ending. And one of the biggest mistakes people do is cut back on marketing when times get tough. So let's talk a little bit about that, because I think it's super important, especially with startups and small business environments.
And it's such an important point. I've talked about ROI a lot, but without, the reason about that is marketing should be an investment with an expectation of a return on investment. I'm not saying it's the apples to apples with, what you do, financial investing, but you should have essentially the same expectation that, after you get to a certain point and you need to see the indicators along the way, that you are getting back a return. And that mindset is different than seeing it as an expense or a line item
Yeah.
that's easy to cut. And if you don't know what it's returning for you, that's a dangerous place to be. And it's a scary one, especially if you're investing heavily in marketing and you don't have those dots connected in how things are attributed all the way through to your business outcome and versus a marketing KPI. That's a gap that is really challenging. And I hate the, okay, well, let's just turn it off as
Mhm.
the only test that you have to be able to understand if it's working or not. That is a bad place to be if you have the opportunity, and we do have the opportunity online to know if it's working versus thinking whether it's working or not, or guessing whether it's working or not. So it's really important, especially in startups, and when you're looking at whether it's your first dollar or your last dollar, as you were in it, as an entrepreneur, taking a risk, a calculated one, and working through it, but not knowing what's happening with marketing, or making a decision on, do I keep doing this, or do I invest in a new machine or some type of capital improvement? it's a challenging place to be if it's not the engine that's driving more revenue for you that then you can reinvest.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, totally. Thank you for expanding on that because I do think it's a very important point because, working in the industry and having agencies and working with clients, it's like how do we ensure that we make sure to educate the clients that about this, and that it is super hyper important so that they're not canceling, they're not quitting when times get tough and then waiting a certain amount of time and then having to go back with everything that they've spent and reignite the engine to get back into market when they could have just kept something you can cut down, but don't cut out.
Yeah, one of the stories, actually, the first story of my book, the only one that I didn't change. Well, I did not disclose the client, but it's very personal because I went into my story of how I learned this the hard way early in my career,
Yeah.
looking at all the KPIs and doing SEO for an attorney. And I was super excited. 3 months in, I've got this report where everything is up and to the right and green, and not just rankings, not just traffic, but I'm seeing all these conversions where people are filling out the form and going to his site. So we sit down and unpack that report. He's quiet. We get to the end, and he's like, "That's great, Corey." He slides the report back across the table,
Yeah.
but he's like, "I didn't get a single new case from this." He's like, "I see all the activity, see the work, but I didn't get a single new case, and I've got." My office staff having to filter through these 20 bad leads and taking up extra time. So he's like, even worse, we're wasting time here.
Yeah.
And until I got back with him and we broke down what makes a good case and got into some of that criteria of how it moves his business and how he
Yeah.
makes money, it was a challenge. And that gap, unfortunately, exists still to this day in so many businesses where it's like, we get it all the way through some really solid metrics on the marketing side. We understand the activity there, and it even gets into maybe CRM, but we never close that loop or force people, and it's messy.
Yeah.
Digital marketers, SEOs, people that are way down in the weeds of their subject matter don't want to get into potential company politics. They don't want to get out of their lane in terms of talking about how to clean up CRM or get into IT and try to change some of those things to get people to adopt it or push the sales team to do things differently. And it's unfortunate because that's one of the big reasons that leads to that gap of not getting, going beyond the out of the box way that, GA4 works or other reporting platforms and getting all the dots connected.
Yeah. Yeah. No, thank you. Thank you for that. That's really insightful. I want to shift a little bit to talk about really what's on everybody's mind, and it feels redundant with every conversation that I have with a marketer, but it's AI in the future, right? But I want to dive in specifically with AI in the future of search, because when ChatGPT came out, and a lot of these sort of large language models, LLMs, came out, a lot of people were like, "Oh my gosh, I can pump out like 3 blogs a day if I wanted to," right? And what they didn't understand was obviously it was a war between Microsoft and Google, and we're like, we're not going to scroll your website if you have AI generated content. Um, but you've been speaking a lot about AI and how it is changing, SEO, and I think that there's some good fast forward a couple of years later. But I really want to dig into, in what ways AI is impacting, how businesses should be approaching search marketing.
Yeah. So I still refer to SEO as SEO, but I broaden the sense of, where, again, like we talked about earlier, being found and how I'm looking at that. Yes, there are some other, acronyms people are trying to throw around or use, like, generative engine optimization or algorithm optimization or whatever that might be. But as we think about the evolution of where we're going with AI disrupting things in SEO, it's interesting. We were seeing the numbers. I was at an event in Portland in 2019, before even the pandemic, and Rand Fishkin shared the trend line of showing zero-click searches emerging, and so less traffic through to websites from
Yeah.
Google. Google was
Yeah.
holding and answering more of the questions then, and that was before AI emerged. And it's just helped kind of accelerate that with Google rolling out its AI overviews and trying to further answer questions in the search results page and sending less traffic through. the benefit, there are a lot of benefits here, but they take hard work and understanding and testing and immersing ourselves in where the technology is going. But the benefit is not being as reliant on Google being the behemoth. As one, there's antitrust things and things might get diversified, but more diversified sources of how people find content. The challenge to that is we have to understand how those work, how each of the different large language models work, how people might search in them, how they might find answers, and how we influence getting our content in there. So there are different levels. So naturally, being found in the marketing side of it is influencing that, much like we'd want to ethically influence where we're ranked in a search engine as well. But then on the using side of it, it's one of those things that's revolutionized things too, right? Things I've was looking at getting a virtual assistant for 3 years ago. I don't need one
Yeah.
because I have, my AI engines to help me generate things. And so there's this interesting balance of not putting things on autopilot if we're creating content. Not, and although I'll say that after giving my 24,000 words of my book and probably 100 hours of training,
Yeah.
Chat GPT is scary in terms of sounding like me and
Yeah.
giving me great content, but out of the box, it wasn't, and
Yeah.
it still will get things wrong. So I use it personally for anything that I don't want to do, don't have time to do, or can't scale. But at the same time, I have to understand, connected to the goal of how I'm doing my own marketing or
Yeah.
how we're doing marketing for clients, is this providing the same quality of content, the same experience, and how we're using it? Is it leveraging and expanding our team and helping us do smart things? Or is it just helping us create crap content faster and going to have a negative effect when, as you mentioned, the search engines look at it and don't like it,
Yeah.
or see that it was just mass produced at a low quality level?
Yeah, no, totally. That was super truly insightful. And I wanted to dive in just a little further, just to talk about the AI tools in relationship to organic SEO, because there's a ton of them out there. People get bombarded with so many. What tools in your mind do you think are really helping SEO move forward versus hindering, just based on how search operated before the development of AI?
Yeah, so there are, looking specifically at the AI platforms themselves, I think any of them can bring a level of quality. What's interesting is I've stuck pretty heavily with Chat GPT because that's where what I've learned is it's hard to re-platform and retrain.
Yep.
So whatever you've trained is probably where you need to be, because again, you want to get quality out on the other side from it versus being all over the place. But you have to understand how each of them work and what they result and where they show up.
Yeah.
Gemini being built into, being a Google product is interesting, and understanding how that might influence search results or how people search in it versus what personas and how people use search functions or research functions in ChatGPT versus Perplexity versus, and then Notebook and others, of how you're searching and seeking content, how you're researching, and or how you're using it as a productivity tool. All of those things kind of matter. And it is overwhelming. It's like, how many hours in the day? So you're either wired to go all in on it, right?
Yeah.
And be inquisitive and test them all, or you're too busy, or you can go back and forth on this depending on the day or week. Too busy, I don't have time to test. I need to stay focused on what works today
Yeah.
and all the work in front of me. And so having a structure and schedule for how you either have to put yourself back in the box and make sure that you're not just focused on the shiny objects and chasing those,
Yeah.
or you bring yourself forward to have some intentional testing time, is important, because all those work differently. And then you layer on all the whole universe of all the software out there that's leveraging their own AI or these platforms to help, as almost as a SaaS
Yeah.
to solve your problems as well. And now you're looking at, how all those stack up in terms of what you're spending per month on all of your subscriptions and how
Oh
you're
yeah.
using them or leveraging them, and what you put on autopilot versus what needs manual and human intervention, and all of those factors can be exhausting to think about. But
Totally.
having your own testing plan, or your company's own testing plan, or your own AI, almost internal committee, to be moving forward and be consistent and working together,
Yeah.
I think is a nice middle ground for that too.
Yeah, no, I agree. And you're right about the cost of these platforms. I remember walking into a startup where um, they had been they had been in business for 4 years, and they were on 67 different platforms. And some of them they haven't even logged in for a year and a half. So it's eating away at a budget. Every dollar counts as you're in growth mode. So like to focus on that is super important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And for example, I've been toying with, do I move over to Gemini, because I
Yeah.
have a Google Workspace account for how we manage our email and everything else. And now it's pricing just changed and it's built in.
Yeah.
But when do I make that switch to go reinvest over there time versus dollars, and making some of those business decisions too?
Yeah, absolutely. I want to move a little bit into your T of like tactics and, maybe also a little bit of like the trends within the tactics. If a company is just starting out, to rethink their marketing strategy, for the next, 3 quarters of 2025, what are the first two things they absolutely must get right?
Yeah, understanding it's easy to see ad dollars going out the door and hard costs.
Yep.
Um, so that's the easy answer, and so I'm going to move past that one. The soft costs are what are the hidden things, right? So that's okay. We're producing all of this content, or we're not producing content. Where
Yeah.
do you start there? Content I look at as the fuel for all these marketing channels. So where can we create the quality content? Whether, again, we talked about, making sure what you're getting, if you're scaling it with AI, it's still quality and meets that standard for your audience. But where can we try to create it once and use it 5 places, repurpose? Where
Yeah.
can we have
I
a
love that.
cornerstone piece of something? Where do we have a book? Do we have a podcast? Do we have a keynote speech? Do we have some industry research? And how can we leverage that? And this is straight out of the book Sell with Authority, but it's how can we then use cobblestones of that over time? And so again, we have one big investment and smaller pieces that we can trickle out from that,
Yeah.
versus having to go create this big thing every week or every month and be constantly like behind and reacting to try to get it out there. And so um, I have a client who came to us, and they were that example I gave earlier of creating all this content on a monthly basis, but didn't know why. Somebody
Yeah.
new had come into the marketing seat, into the organization, kind of inherited the
Oh
plan.
no.
And it's like, well, let's start challenging this. We may be on that exact same cadence, but let's go understand and have conviction behind what we're doing, and
Yeah.
understand the what and why. So then as you go forward, it doesn't feel like just an exercise or an activity, or we've always done it that way, that we have to do it. So the soft costs, if it's somebody internal who's creating it, even if they're using AI, there's time and attention spent there. And that's one of the biggest areas that loses, either gives you guilt because you feel like you didn't post this week and you're up at 2 a.m. trying to get your post done or
Yeah.
whatever,
Yeah.
or it doesn't happen. Or on the other side, you feel like you're doing all this activity, but you're just not getting anything from it in LinkedIn or wherever it might be, or Facebook, and you're not getting the engagement you want. You wonder if you should even be doing it.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. Since we talked about the way forward, are there any tactics that are outdated that we shouldn't be implementing or we should just toss out the window?
I think the cheating answer or the non-answer is, again, if there's anything that even good things or best practices that you're doing that aren't connected to a business outcome, that you can't draw that line through.
Love
I
that.
mean, you can be doing all the right things and they could be the most modern tactics that exist. You could be, or whatnot, or you could be focused on, page experience things for Google, for SEO, to speed up your page load times, things that we know are good things. But in and of themselves, if you're not doing anything else holistically or connecting the dots of how that's going to work, it's one of those things where you're just doing it in absence of a strategy, and it's your mileage will vary, and
Yeah.
it may give you a temporary boost or maybe unlock some things, but it's not going to be a sustainable overall strategy for you. It's just a set of activities you did.
Yeah.
um, Again, most of them are the right things. We can spot old outdated tactics or gimmicky things from a mile away.
Yeah.
Most marketers and business owners and entrepreneurs can, whether it's, trying to do something from 20 years ago of hiding text or
Yeah.
stuffing every city name down in the footer of your service areas that you provide, or trying to go do things that don't feel comfortable on LinkedIn in terms of, feel spammy. But at the same time, I think what's dangerous is we spot those and we think, okay, we're in the middle of the sandbox in what we're doing tactically. But
Yeah.
again, putting too many eggs in one basket, even if it works well for you, SEO, another example, we build these great links and these links are really boosting us. That's one slice, and Google turns the dial a little bit more on the algorithm and tilts it away from that. Well, if we haven't had a more diversified strategy across the board, then we're in a risky position.
Yeah. Oh, totally. Well said. Well said. Well said. Corey, this has been super insightful. Really, touching across. I love your analogy, or like your, not analogy, like your start kind of, build out, which is so helpful to not only just keep folks, in line, but to really help them understand the process of marketing, which knowledge is king, right? And I think that is super key, for any business to thrive and succeed in today's world. Because if they're just kind of, going at it with the knowledge of, okay, we're going to do this because that's what I know of marketing and we should be doing this, it's not the right way to approach. And you hit the nail on the head when you're like, if it's not aligned with their goal in their business, then it's a toss out. It may not be a toss out for another industry or in another business, but it may be a toss out for yours if it's not in alignment with what you're kind of pushing forward to in terms of your goals. But
Yeah.
I Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, I mean, that's well said, and that's probably my key takeaway is, again, if you don't know if it's working or not, or you have that gut feeling that, hey, I don't feel like it's coming through the other side to revenue, then
Yeah.
it's worth challenging.
Yeah, absolutely. But before I let you go, I do have a quick sort of fire off questions that I like to ask everyone on the show. Obviously, pertaining to your industry, but just whatever comes to mind, answer and we'll get through them. So, favorite emerging tool in digital marketing right now?
It's not emerging, but it's emerging in terms of, for me, where I have Chat GPT. And again, I think I've maybe crossed over 100 hours of training it. And
Yeah.
that's why I feel like just in the past month, I've had some breakthroughs where I'm like, oh, that sounds like me. That's in some senses scary
Yeah.
that it's me, but really being able to do some things that I couldn't 6 months ago.
Amazing. Most underrated marketing tactic?
Um, Underrated. Um, Maybe it's funny because I probably feel like a broken record and it's overrated
Yeah.
in my world, but underrated. If you have any level of any type of physical presence or marketplace or brick and mortar, leveraging local SEO, right? All the
Mm,
disruption of all the other channels
totally.
is crazy, but a lot of the same things work in your Google business profile and your listings there, and that's a more finite set of variables to get ranked in your local market.
Yeah. No, I love it. And right on the heels of SEO, what is the biggest myth about SEO today?
It's easy for me to say that the myth of SEO is dead because that's been said for the 2018 years I've been doing it.
Yeah.
Um, and I think it's a mistake to think that, okay, well, I don't need to look at a search engine anymore. I can pivot and quit doing anything in this channel, because that will take you away from the evolution of it, whether it's called SEO or something else. the evolution of where you want to be found by someone searching in an organic place online. So I think that's the myth. If you say, okay, we don't have to worry about SEO anymore, and you don't pivot to where it's going.
Love it. One last question. Other than your book, The Digital Marketing Success Plan, that every marketer and every business owner should read, what other book should somebody else be reading?
Yeah, I mentioned it a minute ago. One that's been great for my industry focused
Yeah.
on agencies is called Sell with Authority,
Hmm.
co authored by Drew McClellan and Stephen Wessner. And it's really about finding your authority position and niching into what you do best, and then arranging your content into that cornerstone and cobblestone mentality. That applies. That those concepts apply across almost any industry, right? And understanding what your authority position is, what your target audience is, if you're not going to the masses, and how you can own that position with whatever type of content matters to your audience. And so, whether it's that book or about niching down, that's a topic that I'm huge on in terms of exploring, whether it's your industry vertical or your service line
Hmm.
or what your positioning is, so you don't commoditize yourself and sound like everyone else.
Amazing. Corey, again, thank you so much for all the insight. Folks who are listening, we've listed all the details in terms of where to find the Digital Marketing Success Plan book. Get your hands on it right now. And remember, Corey and I both agree on this. Digital marketing is not complicated, and we definitely are trying to support you guys in uncomplicating it with the way forward. And I think, and I love the way Corey has presented it with that start process. So definitely get your hands on the book, guys. Super important. Get educated, know what moves to make. Corey, it's been amazing having you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me.